everyone, today we're taking a look at the GepRC CineBot25. You'll notice on the website they'll have an S afterwards. That means they use the larger size motor, the 1505 I believe it is. So without the X it's a 1404. So there are going to be some differences between what I'm showing you here with the S version and what you can possibly get. There'll be a link to the GepRC website and wherever this might be available down in the video description. But also, one thing that's really important about this quad is buy lots of props, because it pretty much doesn't matter how you crash or bump into something, a prop blade is going to break. And I threw away most of the props I was flying with this and one other quad. Additionally, this comes with 2 different receiver types. Technically 3, comes without a receiver, Express LRS, and TBS Crossfire. As far as our camera and video technology, you can get it without anything, so you can add your own if you want to do HD0 or Walksnail, but this is the DJI-03 and VTX. They also sell the Wasp, which you might know under the name the Runcam Link or Caddx Vista. The motors on this S version that I have here are the 1505 4300 kV, and the props are the quad-bladed HQ DT63, and yeah, you're going to need a lot of these if you bump or crash. The rear antenna mount has got rubber. That is not a 3D print. That's some sort of rubber T-mount. Camera is soft mounted across the top. This little slot in the back of the canopy is so you can mount your external HD camera if you choose to use one. Top plate is carbon fiber, or I believe it is. It's a very smooth layering that they used on the external part of the carbon fiber. I would call this a little bit of a tub design. Our VTX is mounted down here to the bottom, but to remove the top side, the motors and the camera away from everything else, we have a screw here on each side, 1 screw on each side here, another one there, and 2 right here. This mount for our antenna, as well as this rubber T-style mount, that's all plastic molding. There is no battery mat, so your battery strap is meant to loop around, which you do get 2 battery straps, as well as all these other accessories, and 1 sheet of stickers. It weighs just about 198 grams. I flew it primarily on this 850 4S battery as well as the 650 4S battery, both from G&B. With the 850, it weighs just about 285 grams. With the 650, it weighs 267 grams. So we're not getting under 250 grams. With the 650 milliamp 4S G&B battery, as well as the naked GoPro, the most recent addition from Flywoo, as well as everything needed to mount and power that external HD camera, all up weight is 327 grams. And even though the carbon fiber, I can't see the motor post through it, motor post, I'm getting 115 millimeters. Okay, so this is the DVR view. Obviously, we have all the statistical on-screen text information, OSD information from Betaflight. I am using the DJI Goggles 2, which I believe is the only way you can get such a recording. Using that because it's probably the most important analysis statistically that we get from Betaflight, and you probably need to see that as you're looking at the performance as well as the efficiency, things of that nature. Of course, on the VTX itself, we have an unadulterated view that does not have any of this text on screen, and it also has the enhanced image stabilization as well as just a higher resolution of images. So this flies as you might expect it for really anything that we've been seeing. It's really hard to differentiate this in flight from really just anything else. I oftentimes mention in reviews how I think Oddity RC is one of the few Cinewoop manufacturers that they actually fly a little bit different. The feel is a little bit different. And you specifically notice that in these sorts of faster flights. That's one of the reasons why for a long time now I think it has been that I've flown these types of quads in a faster, more aggressive sort of style. Just because when we started out seeing these many years ago, you could barely get a good, stable, slow flight out of them. So they're much more versatile nowadays. Now, but I think the thing that you need to pay attention when it comes to GepRC products is the 0 throttle moves. So when you punch up and you get the nose down and you don't have any throttle, you've just got air mode keeping you kind of holding your position from time to time. As we come up to the chimney, we'll see a little bit of a waggle. And we do here too. That's not the first time I've seen that with GepRC products. Now, I do have a video on how I fixed it, which might not be the best solution on the GepRC CineBot 30, I believe it was. And that was to introduce a lot more thrust linearization. Now this one isn't nearly as severe as that one was. This is pretty minor at the very, very top. So I don't think we'd have to increase it much. Of course, an overall change in PID could resolve it as well. But I can't vouch for that as I've not done it myself. Others may be able to chime in on that. But every time we do that chimney sort of punch and we get up to 0 throttle, we see a slight waggle. Otherwise, I would encourage you to really watch this in 4K on the highest resolution, largest viewing platform that you have to diagnose the smoothness of the video quality. Of course, the camera is rubber mounted, and you get the benefits, if we're getting benefits from that. We've been seeing that on a lot of these for quite a while now, but we do have that here. We have kind of a canopy on that camera, which doesn't necessarily limit your up angle unless you want to get to extremes. But in this flight, I'm flying the camera angle that you've seen through the quick specs in the video so far. So I would estimate that to be somewhere around 25 to 30 degrees, where you could get a couple of more degrees before you're maxed out by the limit of the canopy. Of course, because I can change camera angle, the camera is screw mounted, so we can change the camera angle down to flat and all the way up to what you see above what I'm flying. I mentioned it already, but the props are really, really fragile. I had one crash, and I'll show it to you, which I thought was really minor, but I was surprised that I lost 2 of the 4 blades off the prop. So when we get back to the desk, we'll take a quick peek at that crash, and I'll show you that prop because I happen to keep that particular one. The flight has ended, 3 minutes and 34 seconds on that 650 milliamp 4S battery, and that's about what I got. And our battery voltage is coming back up, or it stopped coming back up, I should say, 3.49 volts per cell. So very, very close to where I like my flights to end. I should have mentioned that the previous flight, the faster flight, came on a day where it was 64 degrees and we had winds above 10 miles an hour. My notes indicate that we had winds into the low teens. I believe the weather data that I wrote down was 13 miles an hour, but I also noted that I could feel it more than oftentimes that I feel on 13 miles an hour. Now, unfortunately, I had my camera angle set that particular day during that particular flight section where it was higher than I would have flown for this particular flight, which is the slower flight. So I'm going to show you a sample of this, but do know that the wind on this day is higher. I've got winds on record of 14 miles an hour with gusts up to 20 miles an hour. So much higher winds than I did previously, and you will see the wind kind of pushing this around. Unfortunately, the entire time I've had this, I haven't really gotten a good sort of flight day outside of the one where I had the camera angle set kind of high. I'd already seen this footage and my other attempts at it, and I thought, well, you know, I live in a windy place. I don't know when it's going to smooth out or give low wind days, or maybe I can catch a morning because the winds tend to build through the day. So if I can fly before I go to work, that usually works out for me, but the sun's pretty low then, so sometimes it doesn't actually work as far as being able to diagnose the smoothness of the video. I believe I said 650 on the faster flight previously that we watched. That was actually the 850, because on the 650 we get about 245 of that more aggressive flight style. In this sort of flight style, the slower flight style, carrying a naked GoPro with an 850, we get about 4.5 to 4 minutes and 40 seconds. So again, that's the new naked GoPro from Flywoo that has the metal case. It's actually heavier than their previous version, so maybe it shouldn't be called light. Maybe we should just, I don't know, maybe we need to come up with a third name for that particular one. Actually, I wish they could have kept the weight down because, well, I'm biased. I'm a micro guy, and so I think most of you that are looking at that sort of camera are looking at that because of the weight, where they've actually increased the weight with the metal casing. Something to be aware of there. You can see in the shadows from time to time that little naked GoPro or light GoPro or metal cased Flywoo GoPro in the shadows as well. So just a little proof of concept, and I will show you some of that GoPro footage. I tried to do kind of a DVR GoPro footage combination, and the feedback that I got on that on the previous video was kind of mixed. So I think it's better, especially for those people who are looking to part out their hard-earned cash for a quad like this, that you get a full view of both. Again, on this sort of flight style with the naked GoPro and an 850 milliamp 4S GNB battery, the flower print that I showed you on screen, you're going to get about 4 minutes and 40 seconds, thereabout, give or take. And on a 650, again, slower flight, around 3 minutes and 30 seconds. If you take the GoPro off, you get about 20-ish more seconds of slow flight. I did not fly it aggressively with the GoPro because I crash, and I don't want to ruin that thing because I need it. Okay, let's move on to the GoPro view, and we'll just watch a short section of the GoPro, just so you can make sure you get a full view of the diagnosis. Of course, it's best to watch in 4K with the largest possible screen or viewing device that you have in order to get a real good diagnosis of the flight footage. Otherwise, you are kind of just hope maybe you've got really good eyes and you don't need a large platform to view it on. I don't have really good eyes. I got glasses in my mid-30s and probably needed them slightly earlier than that, and I have to actually take them off to use my cell phone. It's rough when your age changes and your eyes and vision change, although it hasn't changed much since I got glasses. So I'm thankful for that. And I'm told that I have a good face for glasses, so I guess it could be worse. So something I think I mentioned or I forgot to mention in the quick specs is how you get access to your VTX that's mounted down here. Of course, I talked about separating the two halves. We've got what I call the tub down here, which has only got the VTX. It could have the receiver as well, but typically the receiver is just kind of laying in there flat, not mounted to it, so you should be able to separate it, but you will need to take these screws out. GepRC has made this rubberized trapdoor, is a fun name for it. So we have access to our USB-C for activation and pulling the unadulterated video recording right off of there, as well as our SD card to record some additional storage there. And that stayed in. Even though I broke props on the crashes, that never moved around. But I do think you want to be careful of making sure that that's good and flat if you ever get access. You know, you don't want to leave it partly out and then start up and then you got a flight problem. You're not gonna be able to take off. I don't think it would cause damage. Speaking of damage, this prop was broken on that crash, and that crash I felt was very minor. That tree that I got tangled up in could have poked these prop blades out. You know, a branch could have gotten down in there, but it was one of the many flights where I had a crash and I broke the prop. And well, this prop actually, I'm not even certain this particular prop came on a flight on this quad, because I've been testing two quads with these two props, and the quad that had this is going to have a prop change because they're so fragile. They're really not equipped for it. So make sure you have plenty of extra props. I don't really have a problem with these props. I think they're in use on quads like this because they are prop protected and because they are more quiet. So one of the complaints about this style of quad is how loud they are and how piercing that noise is. Even if the decibel level isn't all that high, it's just a really piercing sound generally. And these props aren't as bad as far as that noise profile goes. So they become attractive to manufacturers as well as people that are flying them. I'm a little surprised that they went yet with another new design. My understanding of these plastic molds is they are really expensive. So their cost to making all these different quads with all this different prop protection across all the different profile or prop sizes is a lot of expense. And that just surprised me. You know, we're a small hobby. They don't have millions of customers, regardless of how things might be going for their business. I would be surprised if each product gets more than, I don't know, a couple of hundred maybe of total overall sales. Maybe I'm being pessimistic, but I just know that FPV is such a small niche hobby that getting a plastic mold done time and time again for these sorts of quads that are different has got to be a big expense. But with the big expense, we have a fairly substantial price. You'll find the price without anything or without a camera VTX comes in around $200, and it goes all the way up to around $400 depending upon the options that you select. You can get the S version just like I have here with the 03, and it comes in at up to $525. So the price can really be all over the map depending upon what options that you choose. I don't think that in traditional sort of slow, flat exploratory flight that this prop protection or the overall plastics are going to be a problem as far as holding together. I do think, I always worry about this. It doesn't matter in most of the quads where the materials are a little bit different or possibly unknown, I worry about the durability when it comes to traditional faster or freestyle sort of flights. Not that you're going to be doing that with this, and I fly them aggressively so that you have an idea. Say you're out doing something with a skateboarder or somebody on mountain biking or something like that, and you need to do something in order to keep them in view, or you just want to add some flair to your cinematic flight, so you want to be able to do something. That's why I fly them faster, because not all your flights, even with this style of quad, are going to necessarily be slow. It's going to depend upon what you're shooting, what you're wanting to shoot, and how you're wanting to shoot it. I think I mentioned in the quick specs that it doesn't have a battery mat. It does actually have a battery mat. It actually has two. I'm sorry, I think I got that a little bit sideways. I'll have to include some text on screen. But it does have two battery mats that you can use, but they do cover up some screws. So if you use a battery mat and you need to take a replacement, or make a replacement or a repair, you're going to have to take the battery mat off, or maybe you cut holes in the battery mat so that you can get access to everything again without tearing it off later. So something to note. And then that also frees you up to using these battery straps on larger size batteries. I don't have a lot of larger size batteries, so I think it's reasonable that you could go up to 1100 milliamp 4S on this particular quad. That's probably going to be about your max flight time for exploratory flat sort of flying. And I would estimate that to be around 6.5 minutes, maybe even pushing 7 minutes on a 2.5 inch prop. The 1100 milliamp 4S batteries that I have are really old, and I really shouldn't show them in any form. I just recently acquired some 930 milliamp 4S batteries that are newer. Unfortunately, they just arrived earlier today. I didn't get a chance to test them on this. We kind of went through some details already, but I'll highlight them. So we've got a single screw mount for our O3 camera. I mentioned that this was the angle of the camera that I flew in the faster flight, so you get an idea of what that is. And we have a little bit more camera angle that we can get. This housing really doesn't provide any protection that our camera doesn't already provide, but hopefully it hits the plastic. If you happen to get something lined up right through that area, it hits the plastic before it hits the actual camera. I know those things are expensive, and we want to protect those things. The soft mounting is very soft. I was a little bit caught off guard by that. It's really, really soft. It moves around. But again, diagnose the stable image quality by the video. This little mount, I highlighted the quick specs. It's got a little brace up here, so if you were to crash with an external HD camera, or maybe that's just so it holds it nice and firm, this slides underneath here, and you've got a little notch, so the camera won't hit that notch. It has it's cut out. Just 3 little screws to mount this in there. Seems to work fine. The USB access to the flight controller is right back here, so they've run a little pigtail to the back end of their plastic molding here, and it does come with this little slot filler as well. Last thing I want to highlight was, it's kind of a weird little thing that I noticed when I would set it down, especially because, you know, that table I fly from out back, it's glass, and sometimes when you're setting down quads, it has a particular sound to it with the screws or the carbon fiber that lays down or plops down onto that glass, but this has rubberized feet. I can't... I'm not sure if they're stuck on there like stickers, but they're rubberized feet down here. I didn't have any problems with them coming off, you know, in my crashes, or, you know, just kind of wearing off. You know, over time, everything is subject to overtime changes, but I did notice when I set this down, it was nice and smooth. It didn't have that clack or that clang that I oftentimes hear when I set quads down on that plastic table, or excuse me, the glass table, not the plastic table. So that was something that they did think of, and I appreciate the fact that they went ahead and put some rubber pieces. Seems like a lot of manufacturing costs go into these. Okay, to sum up, now that we're here at the very, very end, the one flight flaw that I see is when you go up to the zero move, so you hit the power and then you get your nose down, there's a little bit of a waggle at zero throttle as it starts its, you know, kind of hover, and then it descends down. We've seen that with other GEP-RC quads. One of the things I would suggest trying, which I've tried on other GEP-RCs that had the same flight symptom, was to increase thrust linearization. I haven't done it on this one. I like to fly these things stock as they come to me. I put on my own rates that I fly all the quads with. If you're curious about those rates, I'll put a link down in the video description to that video which kind of covers that. I use the same ones all the time, no expo. I just move the OSD elements around so that people that come to this channel know where to look for that information, as well as just to set up my radio so that the switches and the sticks and all that stuff. Otherwise, the PID tune, the filters, everything else that they send them with, all comes stock. People ask me about the camera settings, all stock. Didn't change anything. However it came out of the box. That's what I use to fly it with. You know, I'm really, and I think I kind of indicated this in the video, seems like the cost to come up with a quad like this is really, the plastic molding specifically, and then all the 3D drawings that you got to come up with in order to come up with that plastic mold to make sure that your pieces all kind of assemble together. Seems like a lot of time and R&D costs. And you can get this without an 03 for around $200, but if you get it with an 03, and this is a little bit odd, you're pushing $500. So there's a big cost difference, seems to be, than just adding the 03. And that's a little hard for me to explain. So anybody else got any ideas on why just adding an 03 costs $300 and possibly $25? Seems excessive, because aren't the 03s with a camera $230, maybe even a little bit lower of manufacturing costs? They squeezing out some extra profits? Kind of seems like it. But if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise about the GepRC CineBot25 SHD03 edition, or really any of those, please let me know in the comments section down below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.